I had another one of you beautiful souls email me requesting that I actually make a video on their specific challenge in hopes that we can give some clarity and direction. And by helping this individual, hopefully we can help a lot of you who are feeling the exact same thing. I'm also going to approach this a little bit differently in today's video. What I'm going to be doing is actually going through the 3-step process that I do whenever I'm doing my guidance session calls or my long-term mentorship programs. This so you guys can actually see how I break down the process of finding the narrative and the story that controls our lives, dictates how we think, how we perceive the world, and therefore inadvertently shaping our destiny. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's go right to the main question of the email. I'm in my mid-30s and I feel like I've made all the wrong choices in relationships, career, even who I've let myself become. There's this deep sense of regret that clings to everything. And even though a part of me wants to change, another part of me feels paralyzed by shame. It's like I don't even feel worthy of starting over. I replay old decisions and wonder if I missed my only chance. How do I begin again How do I begin again when I feel like I've already ruined the story? Great question. First, so we're going to start this off is with the deconstruction phase that I call it. By the way, sorry for this glare. I have been moving that light around for like 20 minutes. Can't find a way to get this glare out without making the room dark, so I really hope it's not too distracting for you guys. So starting off with deconstruction. So the first thing I want to try to find in this individual's question is the repeated loop, right? So what is the repeated loop? The repeated loop that I notice is loop patterns are comprised of images, thoughts, and emotions. So these are the repeated cycles. If I can't find the repeated action because it's an email, I can only find the repeated emotion, which is regret and shame. So we have the loop that has within it regret and shame. Regret, just for you guys to know, regret is an experience of being stuck in the past. That's a past experience. So being stuck in the past. Shame, on the other hand, one of the most vile emotions, is a self-worth issue. It's an issue that you are not good enough as you are. That you could be something better. That not only are your skills or the way you speak or the way you act not good enough, it's who you are to the core. And that's why shame is a really ugly thing. Which also tells me that shame is also a very cultural-esque thing where there's particular cultures that have shame as a vehicle to change individuals more predominant than other cultures as well. So for me, just so you guys know my background, I was born in Iraq and moved to Canada when I was 2.5, 3 years old, but culturally I'm Armenian. And Armenians typically have shame as like a part of a vehicle for change, right? So cultural shame, if you do something that makes you look stupid or dumb or you make bad mistakes, you're not very successful, there's a feeling you get you get shunned and you're not good enough. So the shame is a self-worth issue. Now, once I start to notice, let's go back to the email again. I feel like I made all the wrong choices in relationships, career, even who I've let myself become. What this tells me in terms of the loop pattern, who he let himself become, which means to me, well, whose standard then were you set by? Was it your standard? Was it someone else's standard? More than likely, someone else's. Someone else's. Now we have to ask, whose standard is this? Well, there could be multiple things. We can look at it as we have culture, we have friends, we have family, we have media, just to name a few examples. But the most predominant one, from my experience working with all the clients that I have, it's almost always family dynamic when you're in your early childhood. That's when you're the most impressionable. You're a fresh computer. Think of it that way. And you're downloading information. And you're trying to find your way to navigate the world to survive and hopefully thrive. So what that tells me, there was a family dynamic. Okay, so let's keep just deconstructing. Let's go a level deeper now. If I go a level deeper, I'm going to think to myself, okay, well, if it's a family dynamic, then what was the family dynamic that would lead to him having this consistent, repeated dialogue of shame and regret? Well, that would probably mean that there was a conditional love aspect. Conditional love. What that means is, essentially, if you are doing the right things, being a good boy or being a good girl, then you are worthy of love and admiration. Now, these can be done differently. Some are a lot more overt and aggressive, and they will treat you actually poorly unless you do well. But some are very light. They're very passive. It doesn't feel so heavy until over time it compounds. That's why I have a section in my work where it's actually my free guide that I talk about the low, moderate, and high arousal states for trauma. And a low arousal state of fight, flight, freeze is basically, for example, someone who says that in their household they weren't really ever told they were loved. But for the most part, things were taken care of. Their house was clean, their parents took them to the activities they wanted, but there was no expression of love, no verbal expression. That's a very minor thing. However, it's not, because it compounds over time. As the years go on, as the years stack over and over and over again, not hearing it, you are going to have a craving. There's going to be a complex, that there's going to be a part of you that is lacking something. And then that's actually the sneakiest kind, because it's not so boom, smacks you in the face. Like let's say you're on the moderate to high level of trauma. It's very minor. And it's subtle, and you don't really notice it. And you might even think you're crazy for feeling it because you're looking around saying, well, most things are good. And it's a very invisible place to be, but I see you. So you have conditional love, which conditional love means you have to be a winner, you have to be good, you have to, be successful, all these things. Then what that means is if there's conditional love involved, then you are also going to be pursuing particular things that are not exactly conducive to who you want to be, but it's who you think you have to be. So then, okay, what does this tell me then? Okay, so if we continue going, so let's say there's a complex built around the conditional love aspect. Now, if we drill down a little bit deeper, this now creates a story. This creates a story. Hope you guys can see where I'm going here. Okay, there you go. A story, narrative. Now, I don't know what the story narrative is exactly, because I'm not speaking to the individual one-on-one. All my one-on-one sessions are through, it's a dynamic. It's a relationship. We're trying to get to know each other, trying to understand each other, asking questions in a safe space and in a place where you can't say anything wrong. There's nothing wrong you can say. So because I don't have that ability, I'm going to have to make some assumptions, and I pray that I am not far off if you're watching this, to the individual that sent the email. So we have the story narrative. The story narrative could be, well, let's see. Let's go back to the email one more time. I really want to make sure I get this as accurate as possible. It's like I don't even feel worthy of starting over. I replay old decisions and I wonder if I miss my only chance. So then what this tells me then is, if I don't succeed, then I failed. And if I failed, then I am not worthy. And if this is the case, what are the values that you take from this? Well, the values are only basically an exterior metric. The accolades that you have, the friends that you have, how funny you are. It's all in the outer world, as I call it. You have the outer world and the inner world. A lot of us, most of us, almost everybody wants to be loved for their inner world, who they are behind all of this. And if you are now loved for the outer world, even if you made decisions that are kind of, let's say, helping you in the exterior, they will feel to the inner world that they're wrong. They will feel incongruent. They're not compatible because it doesn't feel like it's yours, because it partly isn't. It partly isn't. And so once you set the values now, values set your identity. And once that sets your identity, can you see that? Did I go too low? I probably went too low. So I wrote identity, so I'm going to put that. You know what? Give me 2 seconds. I'll jump cut this part. And we're back. So now we have identity written right here, because the values set your identity, and the identity puts you in a frame. It puts you inside a frame. And once you're inside that frame, everything you see, everything you do, everything you imagine is now filtered through that frame, or the lens, as I call it. And if that lens is conditional love, then you will be forever trapped in this conflict of, you want to do something that is soul-led. You want people to love and admire you and be close to you because of who you are behind all that. That if all the exterior went away, they would still be there. That's what we really want. But then if you are shown a world and filled in your head that this is what you need to be loved, now there's this friction and conflict. And there's now suffering, because suffering is when there's internal friction. When two opposing views are colliding. Okay. So let's imagine this is the deconstruction. So this is my deconstruction portion. Now we get to the actual blueprint portion. What is that? Jump cut one more time. The blueprint portion now is actually taking everything we know, and we can start to kind of consolidate it into a bit of an idea, a different philosophy, and a plan to move forward. So the first thing to understand is, what I would advise to the individual is start paying attention. Start paying attention to your patterns. To your patterns. When you start paying attention to your patterns, then everything will start to map itself out as you dig down, because the ideas for this individual is, there's a lot of things that were implied. So the person watching this, hopefully you're watching this video, the idea is you have to drill down into the base of that narrative, the story that is now deriving your values, therefore your identity, therefore inadvertently your destiny. So by finding the pattern, you have to pay attention to your thoughts, images. This can be categorized as fantasies. Are you fantasizing about running away? Are you fantasizing about violence? Are you fantasizing about, being a completely different person? You want to pay attention to that. You can also throw in there, if you're somebody who dreams, I dream every single night, but if you want to throw in some dreams, go ahead and dream journal. I really am a big dream person. I love dreams. I'll make a different video on that. But for now, you have thoughts, images, and then you have emotions. Emotions, I would say, is the easiest way to actually begin this process of decoding yourself, because the emotion is the most potent. You have thoughts, you have images, sometimes they come and go, and it's very hard to track it. Sometimes you get distracted, but the emotion is glaring. So if the emotion is shame and regret, you want to pay attention to what that is linked to. What is that attached to? What particular activity? What sort of action? What sort of ritual is there linked to it? Once you start to notice it, you have a few options. You can either break the pattern, and by break meaning pretty much just stop doing that particular activity that's causing this repeated cycle. That could be taking the advice of people who are giving you conditional love. You can actually start cutting that. You don't need to pay attention to it anymore, just as an example. So you can slice it, you can replace it, and replace it with something that is not leaving you in the state of shame and regret. And then, by the way, the danger of this is the loop pattern over time creates a very strong gravitational pull, as I like to call it. This gravitational pull pretty much takes a sweeping, broad swing at everything in your life. And then you'll start saying that everything is something that you regret. You're shameful of everything. You just go completely broad, And it's not realistic, it's not rational, but when we're in that state of emotion, it doesn't matter. There is no rational thinking. So we want to make sure that we can replace it with something that does not cause that feeling of shame and regret. In fact, the opposite. Are there actions you can do that's going to make you feel more conducive to your soul? Is there something that you would rather be doing instead or saying? Or is there someone you have to stand up to? Or is there decisions that instead of always going to the individuals that are giving you conditional love, perhaps you just make it, whether you're right or wrong, the fact that you made that decision is going to give you a strong sense of reward. And so by replacing, then that's going to start to map out a different emotion. It's going to be very unusual at first. It's going to feel confusing, maybe scary, but believe me when I say that in that transition from one frame to the next, there is going to be a strong pull to go back. But that strong pull to go back is not a signal that you're doing the wrong thing. It's just old ways try to keep you predictable. Complexes that sit below our conscious mind act as little personalities. And when you start to leave and you want to evolve and elevate yourself spiritually, there's a part of you that said, but this is unpredictable, this is scary. That's the big one. I find scary, fear, all these things cause you to feel this sense of wanting to go back to what you know. But stay consistent, persevere through it, don't fight it so much. And then once you get past that initial, I wish I knew the name for it, but it's gravitational sphere, if you will. Once you exit, you'll be fine. So break, replace, interrupt. This is also kind of a subcategory of break, meaning that I tell my clients this. I say one of three things will pop up: a thought, an image, or an emotion. Typically, emotion almost always pops up, but sometimes no. Whatever is first to pop up, you allow that portion to play, but you do not stage it into the next. So if you have the emotion of shame kicking in, the first thing you want to do is observe. You observe. Observe the emotion, look at it. But whatever you do, do not engage with it. Do not engage. If you engage with it and you start to tangle up with it, that is when everything starts to spin. Think of it as you spin, you conduct electricity. You could think of a metaphor like that. You conduct electricity, you conduct power. But it's not power in a progressive sense. It's a power in a regressive sense. It brings you back. For this individual, gets you stuck in the past. So this individual actually has a situation where regret makes you get stuck in the past mistakes that you've made, in the past stories. You get prisoned there, but then simultaneously shame prisons you to the moment, but not in a good way. It prisons you into the moment so that you feel your lack of self-worth. So there's this duality here, and there's also this conflict here too. Because you want to be in the present, but you're feeling the shame of it. But then at the same time, when you start to feel shame, it launches you into the past. And so what you want to make sure you do is interrupt that first stage. Do not let it jump to the next. Observe. The best way I can describe it is observe it. Look at it, feel it, allow it to flow. Don't restrict and tighten anything up. Deep breaths. I always just say 5 in, 5 out. We don't have to complicate it. 5 in, 5 out. Deep, slow inhales, slow exhales. It will pass. And as you exercise that muscle, it will get stronger. However, none of this will be successful unless we actually drill down to the story. And so once you start to find the emotion, you can trail it down to the memory that has caused this to start. And to be honest, it's more than one memory. It's not one exact thing, but over time, those multiple memories conglomerate themselves into a higher meaning. It gives you you sort of package them together into this one overarching signal, message, narrative that you're not good enough unless you do this. And then it's from that seed that everything starts to sprout from. And then that's why oftentimes we can get lost in the branches when really we got to just follow those branches all the way down to the root. Because once you can find the root, then you can rewrite the story. So find the memory. When you find the memory, extrapolate from that the narrative and story that's been guiding you. Once you do that, then you can actually start to pin down the values you've been living by. to then therefore gives you the identity that you have been living by. In other words, the frame. And once you find the frame, now we can really make change happen. And this is when you can rewrite the story. So for example, let's say this individual, you're somebody who wants to do more in life. You want to chase things and you want to create things, but you don't want to create them from a place of anxiety. You don't want to create them from a place of stress or fear. And so the rewritten story, this would take time to do. It won't happen overnight, but the rewritten story is that perhaps was you at a time, that old child, that little boy or little girl, that all they wanted to do is feel love and feel compassion, but they felt that because they weren't given it, they had to do something. They had to perform. They have to show how worthy they are. And then once you've shown how worthy you are, then you were given that reward, the emotion you were honestly deserved to have regardless. You don't need to earn that. And so you needed it at some point to survive. That was a chapter in your life, which at the end of the email, you notice that this individual felt that their whole story was now written. It's not written. That's just the chapter. Quick jump cut. It's simply just a chapter. And you can have multiple chapters throughout your whole life. And I always say this, the story ends when you die. That's when the story ends. But until then, it's just a chapter and you can compound your life into anything that you wish. But let's circle back. Sometimes my brain can fire off a mile a minute. Anyways, so getting back to the story. If the story was at one point you had to do that to survive, well, that's not who you are now because you're in the present moment. You are stuck in today. You are stuck in today. And that is it. There is nothing else. And because you're stuck in today, we are torturing ourselves from that past story that then therefore warps our future. And so the first thing to remember is you're stuck in today. You have a new chance to do whatever you want starting today. And the story you took from that says that you need conditional love, well, that's no longer the case. You don't need to do that because you're going to act as if you don't need to perform to earn love. You are deserving of love because within that, behind the story, there is this divine child, this beautiful soul who has the creative power of God flowing through them. It's just been restricted from all this pain. But again, once we peel that back, the creative flow, the creative power of God can pass through you. And when it starts to pass through you, the ambition, the drive, the desire for growth does not go away. And in fact is now magnified because it's no longer restricted and tightened up by the story. And these stories oftentimes are a narrow path. Like we assume that it's actually a focus beam, but it isn't. It's often just something that constricts you and restricts movement, and then it starts to warp your beliefs, your values, your identity, and everything you see in the world. And so rewriting the story is essentially finding the parts of you that have been rejected. The parts that have been rejected. In other words, your shadow. Who, or I should say, what parts of you did you have to dump into the shadow to be this performer? Now that's hard to know unless I communicate to the person, but you have to ask yourself, there are traits that were deemed undesirable. There are parts of you that had to be casted aside in order for you to fulfill this narrative, this idea as to who you are, or the love that you can receive only if you do X, Y, and Z. When you find that, it's not a fun ride, it'll be a grimy experience, but something really important to understand is this is where the true healing also happens. Not just in rewriting the narrative, but it's adjacent to this. You're rewriting the narrative, but you're also having to bring in the parts of you that you have rejected. I'm going to put it right here. Bring awareness to your shadow. This is massive. This will be a painful process, but it's essential. Bringing forward the parts of you that you have been rejecting for so long in order for this narrative to do its thing, to put it that way. When you bring it forward, then you can see yourself in a more holistic picture rather than in a fragmented picture. Because fragmentation internally is causing suffering and conflict. And so by bringing it forward in front of your eyes and seeing that this is who I am, in all my glory, in all my ugliness, in everything. Because we can't assume that we are just these victims that feel these feelings. No, we have violent thoughts. We have aggressive thoughts. We have desires for bad. They're a part of it. It's a way for us to counteract this prison we feel that we've been put in. And so we have to accept all aspects of ourselves. And when you can integrate the parts of your shadow, that's when you can start to feel this different form of freedom. That when you can start to see that you are simultaneously a perfect being, pure in spirit, while also simultaneously a work in progress. You are both those things simultaneously. And this is something to really take away from this entire video, is that integrating your ego and soul so that you are no longer in conflict. You feel aligned and everything channeled from the top to the bottom is pointing in a direction that you feel is guided by your soul. In order for this to happen, you need to exist within a paradox. Paradox. And in my belief, in my work, that's what I've seen integration be. Is sitting within paradox, that you are both a good individual who wants to do good, who wants to see people exceed in life, but at the same time, you can also be the individual who gets jealous and frustrated and angry at people for doing better than you, and you want to get revenge on them. We are both these things. But once we have awareness of them, now we have control as to how we act, and it no longer takes grip of your consciousness and then warps everything, because that's what happens when you're unaware of what's going on beneath the surface. When we do not, the majority of the time, I'm speaking from my experience. I'm not putting shade on anybody. From my experience, when I was unaware of what was going on below the surface, it ran my life. It ran every decision I made and everything I ever did. And then what's really important is my desire to win and to achieve medals and to want to help people and all these things has always been there. It was just warped and contaminated by a narrative, by stories, by values, by an identity that it was simultaneously put onto me and then I also took in and had to use to survive, which is not my fault, and it's just part of life. It is what it is. But once I was able to peel back the story, did my desire for change, for growth, for ambition, for love, did that go away? No, it actually multiplied now. It was understood and seen. You need to see yourself. See yourself fully, not partially, which is what we do. We only want to look at the parts of us that were good. But no, you have to see the entire part. We don't want to do to us what someone else did to us, if that makes any sense. In other words, you can't accept yourself by only seeing the parts that are good, because then guess what? You're giving yourself conditional love. You're giving yourself rituals and pressures of, well, I will give myself self-love if I do this. You don't want to do the exact same thing. No, instead what you do is say, whatever is within me, come forward, I will embrace you the same. It will not change. I will see you for what you are. And I'll accept you for what you are. If you practice that, things will begin to change. Now, to end it off on my third stage, it's called the blueprint. The application. So we have deconstruction, blueprint, and then application. Application is just putting into motion what we just discussed. So I don't need to write anything down, but essentially everything we did here, you put into practice. This might be a video you'll have to pause, work on something, come back to it later. I know it was a lot of information, but I just want to give you as much as possible in hopes that because I know some videos I watch, there are certain parts that don't really help me. if they only gave like 1 or 2 bits of information. And so I feel like, well, if I give 5, then hopefully there's something within it that will resonate deeply with you, and then you can take and run with that and apply it into your life and hopefully bring you some peace and alignment. Well, for the individual that sent that, thank you very much. I really hope this helped you, and inadvertently, I hope it helped a lot of you guys who've been watching, who've been feeling the exact same thing. If you want to watch a more deeper breakdown of how the narrative and the stories of our lives control our destiny, which it can be rewritten, if you want to watch a full breakdown, go ahead and click right over here to watch the full video. And if you also want to go deeper into my community, I got a link down below, the first one, to download my free guide. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, I would love to share space with you. It'd be my absolute pleasure. Click the second link down below. Thank you very much. And I will see you on the next video.